Hey gang, first weekend in March turns out to be new toy time here on Miscellaneous Matt. This time it's a jointer, the 8-inch spiral head model from Grizzly, which has finally arrived from China and finally arrived at my house. And since UPS Freight was good enough to start the unwrapping process, hopefully it's not going to be too hard to get this thing together. In all seriousness, for those of you who have never ordered a piece of heavy machinery or had to deal with UPS Freight, let me explain to you how this is not the same as ordering something from regular UPS shipping. For starters, regular old UPS delivery is designed to get something into your hands. The driver will get the package off of the truck and will hand it to you, or will leave it at the doorstep of your residence. UPS Freight, on the other hand, considers their job done when the truck arrives at the destination address. Getting the stuff off the truck is not really their problem. So the first thing you need to know is that if you're getting a piece of freight like this, you need to order what's called lift gate service. In the case of Grizzly, it's about an extra $36 or $37, something like that. What it means is that the truck that arrives at your house will have a hydraulic lift on the back of the truck. So the driver will actually use a pallet fork, get whatever you bought off onto this lift and bring it down to ground level. But be advised that this is all going to happen at the end of your driveway. They typically are bringing an 18-wheeler, so they're not backing it up to your garage. They're not helping you wheel it inside. You're going to have to figure out how to get it from the end of the driveway into your shop, wherever that happens to be. Now, one trick that might help you out is if you can get a hold of a utility trailer of some kind. The lift gate on the back of the delivery truck is adjustable. It goes from the level of the truck all the way down to the ground and everywhere in between. So if you can back a utility trailer up to the truck, they can generally bring the lift gate down even with the utility trailer, and so you can push the item straight from the delivery truck onto the trailer. Now you've got some real wheels under it if you need to move it around on your property. That and a front end loader are how I got mine this far. So let's finish tearing into the packaging and see what Grizzly has sent us. Well, that was pretty easy. This is a 240 volt machine, so it comes pre-wired with a standard NEMA 6 plug. The control stalk for this unit ships inside of the base. It's bolted to the frame with the 2 bolts you need to attach it later. The wheels come in a separate box. They attach to the side of the carcass with 3 Allen head key bolts and 13mm nuts. When you go to stand this thing up, be careful because it is heavy even without the top on it. There is, after all, a 3-horse motor buried in there somewhere. Getting the top of the jointer out of the crate is going to require some patience and some tools. There's about 100 screws in there, but once all the braces are gone, you can just lift the top off and set it aside. Unfortunately, the rest of the crate doesn't give up so easily. It does, in fact, require a crowbar and a helper if you can get one. I might have known. Everybody's a critic. Okay, well, all the good stuff is in this box. Here's the safety push paddles, a bag of greasy hardware, wrenches, levers, carbide cutters, and a Torx T-handle wrench, dust port, the belt, cutter head guard, one part of the fence, the rest of the fence, which I will get out in a minute. And of course the body of the jointer, which I'm going to zoom in and show you how they pack this thing. All right, well here's what this monster looks like in the box. And you're probably thinking to yourself, boy, the cast iron top of that thing doesn't look like much. It doesn't look very shiny. Well, that's because at the moment it's not. It's covered with paper adhered by everybody's favorite international shipping, rust-proofing, Cosmoline style grease. I wish I could tell you there was an easy way to do this job. Well, actually it is easy, it's just nasty. Wear some gloves, make sure you've got good ventilation. You can wipe away an awful lot of the grease before you get going with the solvent, but solvent you will need. The top of the jointer weighs about 300 pounds, maybe 350, so you're going to either need some equipment or some buddies to help you lift the thing up. Oh, and by the way, it's bolted to the crate that it ships in, so you're going to have to lift it up in the air and undo 2 bolts, one on either end, to actually get the top of the jointer free. Once it's loose, especially if you're using equipment to move it, it's a pretty easy deal to pick the thing up, get it nice and level, and then shove the base of the unit underneath it. Getting the bolt holes to line up isn't the easiest thing in the world, but you really only have to get them close as long as you're set up to take the weight off of the top. You can wiggle it around and get a couple of them to line up, then the rest will go in real smooth. On the back of the joiner, you can slip the belt over the small pulley and down into the base before going after the 2 bolts that hold the bottom of the fence assembly on. Make sure you put the belt on there before you attach this, or you'll never get it over the pulley. And don't forget to tighten the motor. Mostly its own weight does the job for you. There's a belt guard that you need to install underneath the fence carrier. 2 little screws hold it down. They're in that greasy bag. And then finally you can move on to installing the actual fence. You need to loosen up the structure on the back so that you can get at the bolt holes. The fence will end up a little bit tilted, so you need to square it up once you get everything cinched down. There's Allen keys on the back that lock little turned rings that have pins that go into them. That's what holds the fence totally square once it's all in place. The cutter head guard is extremely important in a joiner, so make sure you put it in there and get the set screw nice and tight. Then you just button up the front by putting all 8 of those screws back in, and you're pretty much ready to go. Last thing I did was bolt on the dust collection port on the side here so I can hook up my flex hose. And that's really all there is to assembly. The directions are spot on, all the hardware was here, and if you're prepared to deal with the weight of the big cast iron parts, it's actually a pretty simple thing to do. Now, I don't really have the right straight edge to completely check out a machine that's this long. This is just a 2-footer, but it's a Starrett. It is really nice and straight. And when I check this thing, it's spot on. The infeed and the outfeed tables are exactly coplanar. I couldn't find any spot where they were off. The outfeed table height is set exactly right, as best as I can tell. If you do the old creep the ruler forward trick, it moves forward exactly 8 millimeters, both front and back. So everything seems to be in real good alignment. While the 2 tables were lined up with each other, I set the scale to 0. What I'm gonna do now is make a cut. I'm gonna drop this maybe about a 1/16 of an inch or so. Go grab a piece of maple and make some dust. All right, this is a piece of sugar maple. It measures 7 and change inches wide, depending on exactly where you measure it. And it's not in too bad a shape. It does have just a wee bit of twist to it, and it's an itty bitty little bit of cup. But nevertheless, should be a good test for the cutters in here. Well, you gotta love those results. That is not quite glass smooth, but that's a really, really nice finish. Much, much nicer than I ever expected to get off of a machined surface. And I was able to take a 1/16 of an inch off of a 7-inch wide hard maple board, no problem at all. The dust collection is obviously not perfect, but it's, it's pretty good. It's enough to keep the dust out of your way while you're working. And since I'm hooked up to a Harbor Freight dust collector, I'm not sure how much I really expected. So there you go. That's all it takes to get a joiner from Grizzly out of the box and cutting wood. If you can deal with the idiosyncrasies of UPS freight, and there are many, then you too can successfully get one of these things running in your shop. I'll do a full review on the joiner itself once I've had the time to actually use it for a while and get to know, whether I like how the fence adjusts and if it has enough power, things like that. But so far as the initial setup goes, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below. While you're there, think about hitting that subscribe button if you would. And as always, stay safe, YouTube.